Welcome to the objective review of the latest Star Wars movie, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Now, as an objective review, I like to break a movie down into 6 categories. I like to break it down into plot, emotion, comedy, action, acting, and directing. And depending on the genre of the movie, I assign different weights to each category. So starting off with plot, I like to assign a 20% weight. I feel like sci-fi movies really need to have a good story to really get you into the universe. Essentially, there's 2 story points in The Last Jedi. There's a story of the resistance living on and surviving and what that means. And then there's the story of the Force and the balance of it between Rey and Kylo. Now, the story about the resistance is kind of split up into 2 areas. There's the story that follows Finn and this new character named Rose as they need to go off and do this mission to somehow stop the First Order from tracking the resistance and the rebels. That part of the story is pretty boring and it seems completely out of place. You have the character Finn, who was really useful in Force Awakens. In this movie, it seems like he could have really done away with that whole plot point. Every time they went to that plot point, it felt kind of childish in a lot of areas, and I was just waiting to get back to really back to Rey. And the other point on the resistance part followed Poe Dameron. That was pretty interesting to me. I think his character really goes through a good arc. He's this hotshot pilot, and then you have this other character who's kind of in opposition to him. But you clearly see both sides of the argument about living to fight another day, and how sometimes you don't have to go out guns blazing. You got to play the long game. And then there's the other side of the story that I found the most appealing, and that was all about Rey and her coming to terms with the Force, her training with Luke, and how she connects with Kylo Ren in some aspect. The mirroring between Rey and Kylo, I think, was done really well. That I think really emphasizes the struggle between the light and the dark side, because there's kind of both the light and the dark side in both those characters, and I thought they both did pretty well in that. So for the plot of the story, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It would probably get higher than that, but the whole Finn storyline just drug on way longer than it needed to, and I thought it was unneeded. All right, on to emotion. For sci-fi movies, I like to assign a 15% weight to emotion. And I think there wasn't really that much emotion in this movie. I think some other Star Wars fans might find it very emotional in certain scenes, but I think that's kind of just nostalgia kicking in. I do think within the characters, Kylo and Ren definitely has the most emotion, which I think Kylo comes off far more sympathetic and empathetic in this movie than he ever did before. You really kind of see a little bit more of his backstory, and you kind of feel for him a little bit more. Rey, you kind of just connect with her because you're just going on this journey and finding out about maybe where her place is in the universe, what's her goal, what's her mission. So for that, I give emotion a 7.5 out of 10. There was no scenes that really made me that emotional, but I think some of the characters really kind of progressed in their emotional arcs. For comedy, when it comes to sci-fi movies, I don't need that much comedy. I only need a 5% weight, and that's a good thing for Star Wars. Star Wars is not that funny of a movie, even though it tries to be comedic in some small parts. I chuckled maybe once or twice, while I think they were going for bigger laughs. And I think a lot of those laughs got in the way of the story, which is a constant complaint that I have with some other Disney movies. Sometimes the scene doesn't need a comedic beat to it. Sometimes just play it very serious. And so for that point, I can only give comedy a 6 out of 10. Sometimes I felt the jokes felt forced. Get it? Forced? Yeah, so that joke is really meta because I think that joke felt forced. So comedy, I have to give it a 6 out of 10. Moving on to action. Action in sci-fi movies is a must. I definitely assign a 20% weight to action. And usually with Star Wars movies, I don't usually love the actual Star Wars aspect of it, the actual like ships beaming on other ships, because they just seem like just CGI things on screen to me. But in The Last Jedi, I really enjoyed it. It really opened with a bang. Poe Dameron, I think, was great. He provided a lot of character and a lot of excitement to these actual Star Wars ship battles. Then there was lightsaber fights. The lightsaber fights were were okay. There was a couple of them, but they don't really compare to some of the other ones in the past, which I feel like they purposely don't want them to be as good as the ones in the past, because the ones in the past mostly come from the prequels. But hey, just lean into that. I mean, take take the good with the bad in the prequels. Just because they're the prequels doesn't mean we should just ignore all the good things they provided. So I thought the lightsaber fights could have been better. There was a fight that involved Finn versus Phasma, a nice little reunion rematch there. I actually really enjoy that. I actually enjoy Captain Phasma in this movie. She wasn't completely useless. She got to shine a little bit more, literally. And I felt the action, even though a lot of action was good, I thought it was kind of few and far in between. Um, but the action sequences I got, I enjoyed. They didn't blow me out of the water, but they were still good. So for action, I give it an 8 out of 10. So next category I have is acting. I feel like you always need good acting in movies. Sci-fi is no exception. So I assigned 15% weight in acting. In The Last Jedi, everyone does a decent job. I don't feel like much is asked of anyone. No one really has to stretch their acting tools, their acting muscles that much. I thought Daisy Ridley was probably did the best job acting. Her character was getting a little bit more to chew on as she come to terms with some of her as she comes to terms with her place in the universe. Other than that, they didn't really provide much for the actors to do. Actors kind of they did well. They did what they were supposed to do. So for that, I give acting a 7.5 out of 10. Next category to go into is directing. For me, sci-fi movies, the directing is one of the most important aspects of it. So I assign a 25% weight for that. I really want directors to bring me to that world and make me excited about something that that isn't real, that isn't really possible. I want them to make me believe in the impossible. And that is Star Wars: The Last Jedi's biggest fault. I think it's the directing. Visually, it's good, just like most other modern Star Wars movies. The cinematography isn't that great, I don't think. There's not many scenes that I look at and I think, man, that's a beautiful shot. The score, while all Star Wars movies score is good, I think it's up to the director to figure out how they want to handle that. And I think sometimes the score is in the way a little bit, but it's still good. The biggest offender when it comes to directing is the pacing. The pacing is pretty horrible in this movie. The first 10 minutes I think is great and amazing. And then after that, you go like an hour and nothing happens. It feels like nothing happens. It's not exciting. It's just kind of characters. You go on that B plot with Finn, and that's really boring. I mean, literally, I'm in an audience in a packed full of theater, and the audience hasn't made a sound, hasn't made a movement, haven't made any emotion, haven't made any type of reaction for an hour, and you feel it. You feel like, wow, there needs to be something to break this hour up. So yeah, the pacing just wasn't really good. It's just, and I think just in total wasn't that exciting of a movie. So for directing, I have to give it a 7 out of 10. So looking at the complete weighted average of the movie, Star Wars: The Last Jedi gets a 7.5 out of 10, which it's good. It's not great. I'm speaking subjectively for here for a little minute. Coming out of The Force Awakens, which I think The Force Awakens is about just as good of a movie as The Last Jedi is, but coming out of The Force Awakens, I was excited. It was a lot to be excited about. There's, you can be excited about speculation, about just, how the new cast is coming along. But coming out of this, I'm not that excited for the next one. I'm just like, yeah, it's gonna happen. I'm ready for it, but there's not a particular thing I care or want to happen. And maybe that's good for the movie. Maybe the movie will be better for people to go in with absolutely no expectations. But that being said, I'm ready for the next one. This one was good. Go watch it, form your own opinion, and I'm out.